Self-trust is one of the hardest things to develop, not because we lack the ability, but because we fear what it demands. To trust yourself means to take responsibility for your choices. It means risking failure, rejection, and isolation. Most people do not struggle with intelligence or ability. They struggle with permission, waiting for external validation before taking action. But what if that permission never comes? What if no one is there to tell you that you're right? Would you still move forward? Throughout history, society has rewarded those who conform. The safest path is always the most predictable one. Parents, teachers, and institutions encourage caution, not because they want to limit you, but because they fear the consequences of standing apart. But those who shape history are not the ones who wait. They are the ones who act. Consider Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch, the self-overcoming individual who creates their own values instead of inheriting them. This idea is terrifying to many because it demands complete ownership over one's life. No external force will save you, and no higher power will dictate your path. You alone must choose. To trust yourself is to rebel, not against others, but against the forces within you that crave approval and certainty. It is an act of defiance against self-doubt. Joan of Arc, at 17, stood before generals and declared she would lead armies. She had no reason to believe she could succeed, no credentials, no validation, only conviction. And that was enough. But self-trust is not just believing in yourself, it is proving it through action. The moment you step forward despite fear, despite uncertainty, despite doubt, you become something else. You become someone who does not need permission to exist. And that changes everything. From childhood, we are conditioned to seek approval. We learn that acceptance comes from meeting expectations, whether from parents, teachers, or society. But this dependence on validation becomes a prison, one where we only act when approval is guaranteed. The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre described this in his concept of bad faith, the act of deceiving oneself to fit into external roles. Instead of being, we perform. Instead of acting from internal conviction, we shape ourselves based on how we want to be perceived. But the cost is our own authenticity. The difference between those who shape the world and those who are shaped by it is simple: decision. Nietzsche's "Thus Spoke Zarathustra" argues that the greatest transformation in life is not from ignorance to knowledge, but from dependence to self-creation. To decide for oneself fully without hesitation is the greatest leap. This is why most people hesitate. The moment you decide, you can no longer blame anyone else. No one else is responsible. You own the outcome, good or bad, and that is terrifying. Trusting yourself does not mean knowing all the answers. It means being willing to move forward without them. Joan of Arc never knew if she would succeed, but she moved forward. Nietzsche never knew if his ideas would be understood, but he wrote them anyway. The greatest figures in history were not certain of their success. They simply refused to wait for certainty. Self-trust is not arrogance. It is the courage to act in the absence of guarantees. It is the willingness to say, even if I am wrong, I would rather be wrong on my own terms than live by someone else's fears. And in that decision, something shifts. You step out of the prison of permission and into the world of possibility. If trusting yourself is so powerful, why do so many people struggle with it? It is because self-doubt is a survival mechanism. It whispers, stay where you are, don't take risks, don't stand out. It tells you that hesitation is safer than action. And in some cases, it's right. The mind evolved to prioritize security over uncertainty. But the problem is that growth requires uncertainty. The very thing we need to evolve is the thing our instincts fear the most. Carl Jung described the shadow, the hidden parts of ourselves we refuse to confront. Often this shadow contains the version of us that could have been, the risks we never took, the voice we silenced, the life we ignored. When we hesitate, we are at war with our own potential. One part of us wants safety, the other wants expansion. One part wants to stay the same, the other wants to evolve. To trust yourself is to make a choice. Will you listen to fear, or will you listen to possibility? Self-doubt thrives in inaction. The longer you wait, the louder it grows. But the moment you act, it weakens. Not because you eliminate fear, but because you prove it wrong. Joan of Arc didn't wait until she felt fearless. She acted despite fear. The only way to trust yourself is to give yourself evidence that you are worth trusting. Not by thinking, not by analyzing, but by acting. Because self-trust is not a feeling, it is a practice. Every society claims to value independent thinking, but in practice it rewards compliance. The reason is simple. A person who trusts themselves is unpredictable. They do not blindly follow rules. They do not wait for permission. They think for themselves. Socrates was sentenced to death for corrupting the youth. His crime? Teaching people to question. Joan of Arc was burned at the stake, not because she was a military threat, but because she refused to doubt herself. When you trust yourself, you no longer fit neatly into the system. And that makes you dangerous. Many people delay action because they believe there will be a right time, a moment when they will feel ready, when the risk will be gone, when certainty will appear. But that moment never comes. Self-trust does not come from waiting for clarity. It comes from moving forward despite uncertainty. The perfect conditions do not exist. And if you wait for them, you will wait forever. The world will always try to pull you back into hesitation. It will tell you to wait, to be careful, to seek approval. But at some point, you must decide, who do you belong to, yourself, or the expectations of others? To trust yourself is to take back control. It is the ultimate form of freedom. And once you have it, no one can take it away. Self-trust is not something you are born with. It is something you build. Most people wait for confidence before they act. But confidence is the result of action, not the cause of it. You do not wake up one day trusting yourself. You earn it through experience. Every time you make a decision without seeking validation, you strengthen it. Every time you move forward despite uncertainty, you reinforce it. And over time, it becomes unshakable. One of the biggest obstacles to self-trust is the fear of being wrong. But trusting yourself does not mean you will always be right. It means that even if you fail, you will learn. There is no path that guarantees success, but there is one path that guarantees regret: doing nothing. Self-trust is the willingness to make mistakes, knowing that you will adapt, adjust, and keep moving forward. The world will always give you reasons to hesitate. It will always offer distractions, doubts, and delays. But at some point, you must decide, will you live according to your own judgment, or will you continue waiting for permission? Because no one will give it to you. No one will come and say, now you may trust yourself. That is a decision only you can make. And once you do, everything changes. We began with a question. Can you trust yourself? And now we leave with a choice. Will you? Because this is not the end, only another beginning. If you are ready to take the next step, if you are ready to trust yourself, then join us. Subscribe, and together we will keep moving forward.